Hello, everyone. My name is Arno Reese. I'm a staff solution architect on the VMware Cloud team. Today, I wanted to show you a demo of the VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery product, or known as VCDR, and its failover environment, which is on VMC on AWS. So the beginning of this particular product, to get in here, we go to the VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery site. We click on Manage Region. This particular region is in Northern Virginia. So in our dashboard, we have several pieces that we want to display and make, the end user, aware of what is going on in the particular dashboard. We'll see that, we have green check marks for everything that is good and red exclamation points for anything that is causing issues. We have several of our recovery plans for a ransomware recovery that are being paused, and so it's not happy about that. You'll see these here. There's this particular plan that's not happy. But what else do we have in that particular dashboard? So from a dashboard perspective, we would like to know, where our scale out file system is, where we protect our VMs, what our sources are as we're fanning in to protect those VMs, where are all the sources? So in this particular case, we have an on-prem, we have a global VMC demo, which happens to be a VMC on AWS instance, a separate one, not this recovery instance, but a separate one, and a Flex Storage SDDC that is up as well. So the other thing that we see here is, so how many protected sites we have, how many recovery SDDCs we have, how many protection groups we're running, and how many VMs we're protecting currently in this particular instance. And this will be displayed over here in the cloud file system. It's called Scale Out File System. You'll see the protected capacity is about 3.4 TIBs being used right now. Our protected sites, those were the ones that we were talking about, the global VMC demo, the Flex Storage SDDC, and of course the on-prem site. The only thing you need to install on an on-prem site is the DRAS connector, which is a VM that connects between on-premise and the cloud. Runs through a TLS 1.2 connection that's encrypted in both directions to ensure that you are air-gapped between your product and then our recovery SDDC. So this is our recovery SDDC right here that's being built, that was built out. And this is what it looks like. It's happens to be, vCenter 8 and vSphere 8 up here running. So we will see the VMs as we restore them come up underneath the management resource pool in this particular instance. Protection groups. So how do you build one of these protection groups, and how do you begin starting to protect your VMs? The way you'll do this is go to protection groups. We have several that are built out, so we'll just take a look at one of these that's already built. We'll look at the 3-tier. So to build out a protection group, we need to name it, and then we need to add some VMs to it. In this case, we're pattern matching. So we're looking for anything that says VCDR demo 2. We can click preview to ensure that the VMs that we want to protect are in that particular group, and then click OK. And then click next, which will take us to the protection schedules. So the restore time is generally as quickly as you can actually start a VM. The restore point, which is the interval of the snapshots that you're doing, is down to 30 minutes with the VCDR product. So if we wanted to add a new schedule, just click new, click the down arrow, say daily, and we want to keep it for 30 days. And then we would just hit finish. And that's all we have to do to begin protecting VMs. The next piece of that is to actually build out a recovery plan. So what we'll want to do is go into the recovery plan. And for our recovery plan, something that we do that we don't do with our site recovery product is we add continuous compliance. That builds out and shows the source, the target, and the orchestration between them, and ensures that everything is working properly. So when you go to run a recovery plan, you know that it's going to work. So how do we set one of these up? We'll go back in here. It's going to ask for a name. It's going to ask for the sites, right? So what's your source site? What's your target site? What are your groups? What's the protection group that we want to use? We want to use that 3-tier protection group that has an app server, a web server, and a database. From a vCenter perspective, we need to map it, source and target. Same thing for folders, compute resources, virtual networks. And then with IP addresses, do we want to keep the same IP during our failover? Do we want to change it? We have some PowerShell scripting that you can run in here. From a recovery steps perspective, we have added a pause in here. You don't have to have any of those types of things in here, but if you wanted to, you just hit add step, add whatever criteria you want, and then hit next. We also have an additional product called ransomware recovery add-on. We're not going to go over that particular piece right here. That'll be a separate video that I record. To activate it, just click activate, and it will basically protect any of the VMs within that recovery plan. And you can selectively add ransomware protection to any of your plans. The ransomware protection is a really cool product because it allows you to get to that last known good copy of a VM snapshot very quickly, because it looks at things like change rates and entropy or compressibility of a VM. It also injects a carbon black sensor and uses NSX advanced features to isolate a VM while you're working on it. And all of that is done within the VCDR interface. So I'll do another video on that because I wanted to keep this as short and quick as possible. So from an alerts perspective, we also have the ability to add alerts. So when compliance checks are run or compliance errors happen, or a failover is happening, so that you know exactly what's going on in your environment. So go ahead and close that. So from a DR perspective, we have two options, right? We have a DR failover test, and we can do a full DR failover. In our particular instance, we're going to do a DR failover test. Again, very similar to Site Recovery Manager in the way it works. What we want to do is bring those VMs up in our target environment, which happens to be VMware Cloud on AWS, but we don't want to shut down anything that's running on-prem because we just want to test this. It brings it up in a network bubble. We can check our VMs, make sure they came up, make sure that our networking is configured. Maybe our DNS and AD and firewall is all configured. Whatever we need to do during our DR failover test to prove that the VMs we're protecting are up to date, have the latest snapshots, and everything is working. So we'll click DR failover test. Under use different snapshot, you click and pick whatever snapshot you want. Just hit OK. Hit next. Now we can ignore on all errors or stop on every error. We're going to ignore all errors. Here we have an option of either running the VMs out of the cloud file system or doing a full storage migration. Since our cloud file system presents as an NFS volume and doesn't require us to rehydrate, and also has an EBS cache volume that has approximately 300,000 IOPS capacity through it, we're going to go ahead and run these VMs on the cloud file system. One of the things that really differentiates VCDR from a lot of other cloud-based products is that we actually have our storage formatted. So it doesn't need to be rehydrated. You don't need to move your VMs. You don't have to wait for a VM to migrate from, an S3 bucket into a VMC instance so that you can finally start it. We can literally run our VMs right out of their cloud storage file system that happens to be air-gapped and immutable. So we kind of have the best of both worlds here. Just click next. It's going to tell us what steps it's going to run through. It's going to validate that we actually want to run that test plan. And as soon as I hit run test, it'll basically come up with a list of items that it's going to do. It's going to bring up that database first. Then there's going to be a pause. It's going to wait for that pause to be clicked through, and then it'll bring up the app server and the file server or web server. So what we'll do, we'll click these down arrows. You'll see these steps are starting to run, and then we'll click over into our recovery environment, which is VMC on AWS. It's running right here. Under the management resource pool, we'll see the database pop up first. There it goes. The next step is it'll start it. And as soon as that database is started, we'll click back over to VCDR because we're going to expect a pause because we wanted to validate that that database was up. We'll click through that pause, and it'll bring up the app server and the web server. You can see under the recent tasks when it comes up, just went ahead and sent the command to run it and power it on. So we want to check that database. Is it up? Yes, it is. Good to go. Here's the input that we had put into our recovery plan. Again, you don't have to have these if you don't want them. Is up. Just hit continue. We'll click back to our recovery environment. Now what we're expecting is that that app and web server to come up. We'll see down in the recent tasks, we'll see those particular VMs come up. And again, all of these are run out of the cloud file system. We didn't have to rehydrate. We do not make any changes to our VMs. Everything that we are doing is built and managed and licensed by VMware. So this is a full SaaS product, and it works very well with VMC on AWS, which is also a SaaS product and is fully licensed and run by VMware. So all of these work in tangent. There is no one else that needs to be called from a support perspective, which I think a lot of clients are looking for. A lot of DR strategies are built off of multiple vendors. Unfortunately, when a DR event occurs, often something isn't working, and so you have to go to multiple sources to get whatever is not working fixed. We'll see here that those snapshots are going to be started. There goes the first one. The app servers come up. The web server will be the next one that comes up. There it goes. So now we see that all of these are up and running. The app server came up first or second, and the web server's next. And so to finish this particular test, so say we went in here, we did our testing, and we were ready to spin this back down, all we do is click cleanup within VCDR. Type in cleanup test. And those VMs are going to be turned off, and they're going to be, basically put back into a protection mode within the cloud storage file system. That's it. That's all you have to do to run a DR test and ensure that those VMs work and that are up to, your latest snapshot that you expect them to be. From a VCDR perspective, the last thing we do is click acknowledge. It's going to ask us how everything went. Test went well. And these are free-form text fields that you can type in that end up populating the report that I'll show you here in a second, which I think is extremely good for any of the folks that are running DR tests that have to keep a repository of any of the tests that they ran. What happened? How long did it occur? Were there any errors? So we're done with that particular failover. We can go to reports. We can see that last report. That particular instance took 2 minutes and 25 seconds to come up. We want to see the report. We just click on it. It'll show the report down here, but we can create a PDF that's a little more user-friendly. There we go. Click on that PDF. So this is going to be the who's, what's, when's, where's, and why's of this particular DR plan. It'll show your source and targets. It will also show you how long each of the recovery steps took. Like for instance, the database. The VCDR demo database took 48 seconds to come up. It'll also show you, all the other VMs that you have in here, what went on, were there any errors that occurred. So I think this is extremely helpful for a lot of our clients to ensure that when they're running their particular DR strategies, that they know what's going on. Are there any hiccups? Are there any times that this is run that is completely unusual for them? Are there any errors that they had? So literally, we're trying to cover everything for you, all within one particular interface, so that you don't have to click around, so that you don't have to constantly rely on multiple vendors for your particular DR solution. Again, we're protecting virtual machines from on-premise. We're protecting VMC on AWS or even Google Cloud, VMware Engine, GCVE, hyperconverged infrastructure in VCDR. This resides on top of AWS. Really appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.